Hello everyone, I'm Arindam Ghosh. As you all know that I'm an assistant professor in the Department of English, Krishna Chandra College, Hetampur, Birbhum. And today I will begin my semester 3 classes. So let us begin with the syllabus of the English Honours prescribed for all the students affiliated under the colleges of Burdwan. So what is there in the semester 3 syllabus? You have to study 3 core courses in this semester 3. What are the 3 core courses? CC5, CC6 and of course CC7. You have to study generic elective course 3, which is of course an interdisciplinary subject. For example, it can be political science, it can be philosophy, it can be history, anything of your choice or choice provided by the college. And of course there is skill enhancement course, ACC, skill based course, ACC1. And in this context I must tell you that Krishna Chandra College, Department of English will offer you translation studies in the ACC1 of semester 3. So there are 3 core courses, 1 generic elective paper and 1 skill enhancement course. So I must tell you that skill enhancement course is there will be a 40 marks in semester examination in the skill based course. Of course there will be 10 marks internal assessment, so that makes it a 50 marks examination. There are 2 credit assigned for the skill enhancement course and 6 credits assigned for the core courses. Core courses of course will be 70. There will be 60 marks in semester examination. 10 marks is assigned for your internal assessment examination in each core courses, and of course 5 marks is assigned for your attendance. So this is the entire structure of the semester 3 syllabus. So let us move into the details of the semester 3 syllabus. Semester 3 syllabus begins with CC5 or course 5. American literature is there. In the section A, there is Mark Twain's The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. It's a non-detailed text, a famous canonical American novel written by Mark Twain. Of course, there are some famous short stories: Edgar Allan Poe's The Purloined Letter, F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Crack-Up, William Faulkner's Dry September. They're all detailed texts, these short stories. You have to read about in the section 2 some famous American poems like Annie Bradstreet's The Prologue, Walt Whitman's Passage to India, only lines from 1 to 68, Alexis Armand Alexis' The Crow Testament. And you have to read about T.S. Williams' The Glass Menagerie, a famous canonical drama about the American dream, The Glass Menagerie. So there are certain topics, assigned topics by the university syllabus, and they are the American dream, social realism and the American novel, folklore and the American novel, black women's writings, questions of form in American poetry. All these things are prescribed in your syllabus. You have to study all these topics in the context of these literary texts. Let us now move into the CC6. Course 6 of the popular literature. This particular paper is termed as popular literature. What is popular literature? How we can theorize this term popular literature we'll know about later. Bangla jake bole jonopriyo sahitya, popular literature. So section A, in the section A we will study Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, a wonderful children's fiction. Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. It's a famous whodunit, that is detective fiction about Hercule Poirot, a famous detective created by Agatha Christie. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. It's a detailed text. And of course you have to study Frank L. Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which is a famous fantasy narrative. And of course the canonical comic album, the comics written by Hergé, the eternal comics, that is Tintin in Tibet. You have to know about what is popular literature, how it differs from the classical literature, from the canonical high literature. We have to know about what is graphic narrative, what is comics, about the genre of comics. You have to know about the detective fiction, the coming of age novel, gender and identity in these texts, ethics and education in children's literature, what is children's literature, the definition and scope of children's literature, the basic difference between sense and nonsense, and of course what is nonsensical literature. You have to also know about graphic novel, what is graphic novel, and what are the examples of graphic novel, how graphic novel differs from the comics. All these things in the CC6 of your syllabus. Moving on to CC7. Remember, CC7 is a canonical British literature paper. It's a British poetry and drama paper on the 17th and 18th centuries British literature. There is John Milton's Paradise Lost, a famous epic, which is a very loaded text. I will call it a multi-layered British epic. You have to devote a lot of time in order to understand the multiple layers of this epic, in order to know about the character of Satan, to know about the background of this epic, Milton's time, restoration period, socio-political background. These things become very important in discussing the text of the Paradise Lost. You also have to study about another Jacobean text, Thomas Dacre's Shoemaker's Holiday. You have to also study about Alexander Pope's The Rape of the Lock, which is a mock epic, a famous mock epic. To study only Canto 1 and Canto 3 here, and of course another canonical post-colonial text, Apara Behen's Orunko, written by one of the first of the women writers, first of the famous women writers, Apara Behen. So this is your general structure of your semester 3 syllabus. So of course there are 3 75 marks paper. Let us have a look. Yes. So you have to study about 3 core course papers. So 75 into 3 is equal to 25 plus 75 because of the generic elective paper plus 50 marks examination for the skill enhancement courses. So to study 75 into 4 is equal to 300 plus 50. So 50 marks. So semester 3 is equal to 50 marks of aggregate grand total examination. So this is your syllabus. So let us now begin with the popular literature. What is popular literature and how we can define popular literature, how popular literature differs from the classical literature. Let us begin. I will begin with Tintin in Tibet. I have titled this presentation as Tintin in Tibet, Text and Context. So as I have already said, that your core course 6 is about popular literature, and we have to understand a little bit about it, that what is popular literature. Basically, popular literature includes those writings intended for the masses and those that find favor with large audiences. So popular means something that is very popular with the masses, not with the classes. So there is always a distinction between masses, that is many people, and classes consisting of few people. আমাদের সভ্যতা, আমাদের সাহিত্য সবসময় ডিফারেন্সটা ক্রিয়েট করে, যে এই পার্টিকুলার সিনেমা can be called an art cinema because it is dedicated for fewer people. It is for some sophisticated, quote unquote, trained audiences. So you don't know really what's the meaning of the trained audiences, but certain literatures, gory literature, macabre literature, literature full of violence, literature full of sexuality and other things, যেগুলো সবসময় জনপ্রিয় হতে পারে সাধারণ মানুষের মধ্যে, একটু মোটা দাগের কোটা, আমি খুবই আপত্তিকর কথা বলছি, কিন্তু সেই কথাগুলো মানে পপুলার লিটারেচারকে ডিফাইন করতে থিওরিটিক্যালি ইউজ করা। সো পপুলার লিটারেচার ইজ সামথিং দ্যাট ইজ ইন্টেন্ডেড ফর দ্য মাসেস and that find favor with the large audiences. Though modern and contemporary literary theory deconstructs this distinction between the popular literature and the high literature. Postmodern literature or postmodern theory, postmodern philosophy always favors the voices from all classes of people. So this popular literature can be distinguished from artistic literature in that it is designed primarily to entertain. Popular literature, unlike the high literature, generally does not seek a high degree of formal beauty or subtlety, and that is not intended to endure. So the question of endurity, যেটা থাকবে কিনা, মানে কালের অতলের গভীরে এটা তলিয়ে যাবে নাকি থাকবে, এই প্রশ্নে পপুলার লিটারেচারকে সবাই বলা ইট ইজ এফিমেরাল, ইট ইজ এসেনশিয়ালি নন ইউনিভার্সাল অ্যান্ড নন ইটার্নাল, যেটা থাকবে না, যেটা তুমি আজকে পড়ছো কালকে ভুলে যাবে। But great literatures, for example, the works of Goethe, works of James Joyce, works of Homer, Iliad, Odyssey, Mahabharata, all these are examples of great classical literature. Why classical? Because according to some critics, it endures some great values, it endures some great morality, some loaded human iconography, and hence it is called classical literature. So what is popular literature? For example, comic books, detective fictions, romance, some short love stories, medieval metrical romances. In fact, romance is also an example of the popular literature because it is written for catering for the masses. So there is always a distinction between the popular literature and the classical literature. The growth of the popular literature has paralleled the spread of literacy through education and has been facilitated by the technological developments in printing. And with the industrial revolution, works of literature which were previously produced for consumption by small, well-educated elites became accessible to large sections and even majorities of the members of the population. So there is always a question of the consumption in popular literature. কত বেশি করে প্রিন্ট করা যেতে পারে, টিনটিনকে কত বেশি করে লোকের মধ্যে ছড়িয়ে দিয়ে যেতে পারে। For example, your Tintin intimate has been translated into 35 languages. The whole bunch of the Tintin comic albums has been translated more than into 70 languages. 70টার বেশি ভাষাতে টিনটিন অনুদিত হয়েছে। যেরকম ভাবে in Bengali it has been translated in Urdu, in Malayali, in every language, various languages of the world. Tintin has been originally written in French, in the Belgian variety of the French. কিন্তু সারা পৃথিবীতে বিভিন্ন ভাষাতে এটা পপুলার। So popular literature মানে that which is popular among the masses, that attracts public figures, that attracts large number of people, a majoritarian section of the audiences. So the boundary between the artistic and the popular literature is always murky. As I've said, murky means shadowy, যেটা বোঝা যায় না যে কোথায় গিয়ে ডিফারেন্সটা মিটে গেল, because much traffic between the two categories according to the current public preference and later critical evaluation has already been occurred. A dialogue between the popular literature and the classical literature, there is a great dialogue between the two. অনেকেই বলে কোথায় গিয়ে পপুলার ফিকশন এবং ক্লাসিক্যাল ফিকশন মিলে যাচ্ছে, টিনটিনকে এটা ক্যানোনিক্যাল ক্লাসিক্যাল কমিক অ্যালবাম বলতেই পারে। ফলে এই যে জনপ্রিয় সাহিত্য এবং জনপ্রিয় কোনটা সাহিত্য নয়, এই ডিফারেন্সটা অনেক সময় গিয়ে গুলিয়ে গেছে বিকজ অ্যাবাউট দ্য কোয়েশ্চেন অফ দ্য regarding the ephemerality, non-endurity, whether a popular literature is enduring or not. A question uttor ami ekhono bolte pari Tintin has been first published in the year 1929 and this is 2019. Even after the 90 years of the publication of Tintin is widely popular across the whole world, across the people of the whole world. সারা পৃথিবীতে টিনটিন এখনো পড়া হয়, 70টার বেশি ভাষায় টিনটিন অনুদিত হয়েছে। ফলে এটা বলাই যায় যে টিনটিন একটা পপুলার লিটারেচারের গণ্ডি টপকে হাই লিটারেচার বা ক্লাসিক্যাল লিটারেচারে চলে এসেছে, ধ্রুপদী সাহিত্যে প্রবেশ করেছে টিনটিন। Another great example is that of the William Shakespeare. While he was alive, he has been termed as a popular literature figure, as a person who encourages the masses from all classes to enter inside the theatre, whether be it a laborer class, or be it a king or a queen, or be it other sophisticated audiences from various aristocratic classes. All were attracted to Shakespeare's plays. But Shakespeare's plays also contain various bloody scenes of gory, macabre scenes full of witches, various dark figures. So it can be called popular literature. But again, Shakespeare's literature retained great values, great morality. It is loaded with human philosophy, which gives its enduring appeal, and hence it can be treated as a great icon of literary values. It's a great creation of literature. So Shakespeare is an ideal example who can also be thought of as a popular literature writer as well as a creator of artistic literature. So indeed, the main, though not invariable, method of defining a work as belonging to popular literature is whether it is ephemeral, that is losing its appeal and significance with the passage of time. As I am telling you that in fact this category also defining a particular distinguishing between a popular literature and a classical literature on the basis of the ephemerality is also not fully proven, because a work of art like Tintin is of course an universal and eternal in nature. এটা সারা পৃথিবীতে সবসময় বিরাটভাবে জনপ্রিয় ছিল। ফলে পপুলার লিটারেচার অ্যান্ড ক্লাসিক্যাল লিটারেচার, পপুলার লিটারেচার অ্যান্ড ধ্রুপদী সাহিত্য, এর যে বিভাগ, এই বিভাগটা তো সহজে করা যায় না, করা যেতে পারে না। Now I must tell you that the field of the popular fiction is a very notable part of the popular culture. Now what is popular culture? Pop culture বলা হয়। পপুলার লিটারেচার জানতে গেলে কাকে পপ কালচার বলে সেটা একটু বুঝতে হবে। Now what is pop culture? Basically pop culture is widespread, ever pervading, and from this pop culture popular fiction is actually or popular literature is actually a part of this pop culture. So there is no defining clear boundary between the culture and the popular culture, and between the popular fiction and the general fiction in general. So what we can tell is that, for example, various cultural practices, like for example Sotitaho Protha was a popular culture in a particular point of time in history. For example, in the 19th century Bengal, Sotitaho Protha or Sati was a venerable doctrine, was a celebrated doctrine in the 19th century Bengal, Sotitaho Protha. But with the passage of time, gradually it eroded. So can we call Sotitaho Protha a part of the popular culture? Of course, yes. For example, আমাদের সময়ে আমরা বলতেই পারি যে বেদের মেয়ে জ্যোৎস্না, it's a very example, a canonical example of the popular cinema. It's part of the popular culture. For example, রাস উৎসব, আমরা রাস সেলিব্রেট করি, রাসের মেলা হয় পাড়ায় পাড়ায়, it's an example of popular culture. So all these things are example of popular culture. And what is popular fiction or popular literature? Popular fiction has been an integral part of the popular literature, and basically popular fiction means the fiction which has been popular among the masses, the fiction which has been celebrated by the masses, especially genres like detective fiction, romance, love stories, প্রফুল্ল রায়, আশুতোষ মুখোপাধ্যায় বাংলাতে, writers like for example আমরা বলছি চেতন ভগত is part of the popular literature. So popular literature মানে আমরা একটু নাক কোচকাবো, বলবো যে না এটা ঠিক তো লিটারেচার নয়, এটা কিন্তু মডার্ন একাডেমিক্সে পড়া যাবে না। popular literature is the historical container of the feelings of the masses, is the historical container of the emotions of the masses, যা থ্রু দিয়ে ডিসেকশন করে ব্যবচ্ছেদ করে আমরা বুঝতে পারি যে সেই সময়ের একটা পার্টিকুলার জনতা, একটা পার্টিকুলার সেকশন অফ দ্য পিপল কি ভাবছে, কি বোঝার চেষ্টা করছে। সো দ্যাট ইজ অলসো a very important part and parcel of the popular literature. Moving into various genres of the popular literature, the most important genre in popular literature is of course romance, a very important genre. Love stories from the Middle Ages to the present, it has been celebrated. Another important genre is fantasy, আমরা যেটা পরবর্তীকালে এই সিলেবাসে পড়বো। ফর এক্সাম্পল অ্যালিসেস অ্যাডভেঞ্চার ইন ওয়ান্ডারল্যান্ড, অ্যালিস চলে যাচ্ছে একটা অ্যাডভেঞ্চারে ওয়ান্ডারল্যান্ডে, where he is encountering various bizarre looking animals of various shapes and color, animals speaking the human language. We don't know how to learn the human language, because there is in the conventional viewpoint there is no such communication. There is of course a communication method among the animals, but there is no such thing called language in the animal world. But in Alice's adventure in the Wonderland, we can see that the communication between two animals is occurring through the use of the English language. Again, science fiction, আমার অনেক ছাত্রছাত্রী ডার্ক দেখে ফেলেছে, so of course it is an example of the popular literature. It's a science fiction, so ডার্ক নিয়ে অন্য কোনো দিন আলোচনা হবে। এগিয়ে যাচ্ছি। For example, westerner is a particular genre. You can see it in various films where there is a person in the cowboy hat. He is riding a great horse in the American frontier. That is an example of the typical Western, where there is a very chauvinist, a male masculine hero who is killing all other heroes through duels through his revolver. So all these are examples of the Westerners and their popular literature. And of course, graphic literature, comic books, these are examples of the popular literature in general. So this is a map defining the different genres of the popular literature. For example, mystery is an example of popular literature, thriller is an example of popular literature. এবার mystery অনেকগুলো ভাগ হয়। For example, noir, hard-boiled, cozy mystery, historical mystery. Thriller অনেক ভাগ হয়, historical thriller, medical thriller, psychological thriller. In fact, science fiction এর অনেক classification হয়, dystopian, utopian, space opera. In fact, there are also classification in the section of the romance, like historical romance, western romance, etc. Fantasy is also another example of the popular literature. So mystery, thriller, science fiction, romance, fantasy, these are all examples of popular literature, various genres defining popular literature. Now we have to understand what is popular culture. Let us now understand what is popular culture. I have already given you an example of Shotidaho Protha, a 19th century example of popular culture. Rash Mela, another very important and pertinent example. Joydev Mela is a very important, the people of the Birbhum will know it as a very important example of the popular culture. So what is culture? Culture is basically the constant process of producing meanings of and from our social experience. I am encountering you through this social media or through the media of the YouTube. So this is a medium of interaction, a digital platform through which we are encountering with one another. And through this process, we are trying to produce meaning. Of course, আমি কিছু কমিউনিকেট করার চেষ্টা করছি তোমাদের সঙ্গে, তোমরা কিছু কমেন্ট সেকশনে বলবে, আমাকে হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে চ্যাটে কিছু বলবে। এই যে প্রসেস অফ ইন্টারাকশন, this trying of our constant striving of producing some form of meanings from our social experience is known as culture. So these meanings produce a social identity. Culture making is a constant process. It is a distinctly important social process. সংস্কৃতি, আমাদের সিনেমা, আমাদের থিয়েটার is also an example of culture. So culture, it's difficult to define culture. Everything is process of the culture. Our entire social system is actually an example of our culture. Culture controlled by the system of power, patriarchal power, male power can dominate করছে আমাদের আইডেন্টিটি কালচার দ্বারা ক্রিয়েটেড হচ্ছে, কন্ট্রোলড হচ্ছে. So entire social system is stratified. It is dominated by certain groups who have relatively more power, like whites, males, wealthy capitalists, etc. So the dominant ideologies of our society emanate from these categories more than others, and these dominant ideologies affect the preferred or dominant cultural readings of the media texts. A dominant culturally media text, media to everything, newspaper, social media, everything is media, medium text. For the age interpretation a cultural context hoy, that is popular culture, যেটা among the masses or the popular or the wide large audiences এর মধ্যে popular হয়, তাকে popular culture বলে. So popular culture is very much unwritten lore of the masses, passed down orally from one generation down to another. Thakumar Jhuri is an example of the popular literature. From one generation to another. Elite literature. What is elite culture? Elite culture usually refers to the literary and artistic world of the educated and the dominant class, those who are controlling the society. Though I am not agreeing with this conventional viewpoint, এখন popular culture, popular literature definition অনেক বদলে গেছে. So popular literature is common, simple, rural, and unliterary in nature, while elite culture is literary, created among the wealthy and the famous people. So examples, for example, folk music, charon kobiter গান, popular sports, কিছু বিভিন্ন ধরনের আমরা ছোটবেলায় খেলতাম কুমির ডানা is an example of the popular culture. While on the other hand, classical music, ধ্রুপদীর গান, উস্তাদ আমজাদ আলী খানের গান, philosophical literature, grammar school, critical analysis of the texts, all these examples of the literary, the elite culture. While on the one hand, rural, traditional, conservative, handmade, these things are known as the folk. While what is pop culture? Pop culture is urban culture, fad, innovative, mass-produced. It spread rapidly, খুব তাড়াতাড়ি ছড়িয়ে পড়ে সোশ্যাল মিডিয়ার মাধ্যমে, তাড়াতাড়ি মেশিনের থ্রু দিয়ে এটাকে জেরক্স কপি ক্রিয়েট করা যায়. ফলে this is the basic difference between folk literature and popular literature. Folk literature এবং popular culture কে মিলিয়ে ফেললে চলবে না, difference রয়েছে. Folk literature is rural, popular culture is essentially urban in postmodern context. Folk literature is traditional, while popular literature is fad, innovative, mass-produced. It spread rapidly in a large area, and of course, market economy is its chief target. So, বাজার অর্থনীতির উপরেই popular culture depend on. Now we will move into, after knowing what is popular literature and popular culture, we will now move into what is comics. What is comics? I will discuss it in my next video, because through this particular slide, through this particular medium of expression, I am entering into the Tintin in Tibet. So what is comics? What is the technical definition of comics? Comics এর একটা স্ট্রাকচার কেমন হয়, এটা আমি পরবর্তী লেকচারে ডিসকাস করব tomorrow. Okay.